If you're asking about the size of government and the president making a decision to reduce the size of government when it makes sense, I have no issue with that. By the way, the staffing and the
You're presupposing. I have no issue with cutting government size when it makes sense. Yeah, if it makes sense, everyone's gonna agree with it. Necessarily, it makes sense. What? That's not what he's saying. He's saying these people were directly relevant as to these natural disasters not being able to be accounted for in an efficient manner. Trump cut them. The whole point that Brian's making is that it doesn't make sense. Don't presuppose that it makes sense. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rinyald. And if you disagree with anything in the video, make sure you join the Discord and we can have a chat sometime. Okay. Should be good. Should be good. Okay.
I think Jeffrey Epstein was a sexual predator. Look, I want them to release everything. Every adult who was culpable and responsible, I think the public should know.
You think President Trump has something to do with Epstein, with your brother being killed?
I wouldn't write that off.
I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN, promo code Destiny, to get around the Texas porn ban. On reflection, do you think that was grotesquely tasteless thing to be posting?
Absolutely not. The hand wringing here. Oh my God, stop. I'm not going to sit here and argue about jokes when these guys are spreading lies. When it happens in LA, when it's about the wildfires, you guys make jokes when
I'm not a
politicians
sick,
are getting
vile
killed.
person like you. If you understood the size of the town, which you don't, because you don't care, because you're literally trying to make money off of dead people, Google the size of the Comfort, Texas City Hall. You can't fit hundreds of people in any meeting there, you moron.
Well, Attorney General Pam Bondi is facing intensifying bipartisan pressure for the calamitous handling of the Epstein file. Everybody very excited.
My God, here, Delta said, my glorious liberal king is Destiny. No, all right. Destiny, I can almost promise you he's going to come out of this debate looking absolutely fucking awful, all right? The real liberal king is sitting right next to him, buddy. It's Brian Tyler Cohen right here. That's the real liberal king, okay?
You know, I had one of the administration on Uncensored, Alina had. But let's remind people what she told me literally like 2-3 months ago.
It is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals.
So do you think they were just lying the whole time?
Were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Piers, in this country, Brian
is mid. I haven't seen him on like a more cutthroat debate show like we're probably going to see him on right now. I think last time, I think he was on Piers before. I just haven't really seen him. So I don't know how he's going to engage with this kind of format, whereas I know Destiny's going to thrive because this is like his whole fucking thing. I think, just as a preface, I think those don't worry, Rinyald, you're second on my liberal list. Okay, thanks, buddy. I think that the Destiny tweets in regard to the kids drowning in Texas were really, really, really bad. I think that those were just bad. And like when I said this on X, I think, when he made the tweet about the firefighter, I disagreed with it. I thought that was bad as well. But I could at least kind of get the idea that he was getting at. Whereas like this just feels exclusively cruel, and you're not even pointing your like the ire at anybody who did anything wrong. You're just pointing it at a bunch of kids who drowned. I think that's pretty fucked up. But again, you know, jokes are jokes though. Edgy humor is what it is. All right, catch you later. I'll watch one of the videos if you post it, or I'll be back. I don't know. All right, have fun. Yeah, I don't know. I will see. I guess we'll just see. I feel like Destiny may not come out of this looking very, very good. But at least Brian Tyler Cohen will be here to kind of recenter and make the liberals look not awful.
investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability.
Now, Ben, that clip has had millions and millions of views this week, understandably, because there's a massive disconnect between what she told me there and what Pam Bondi was saying and what others were saying and what's actually materialized in the last 48 hours. Senator Cruz there very firmly that he wants everything put out and he wants criminal action taken against those who broke the law. What's your view?
Couldn't agree more. Look, I think there's transparency the American people deserve, but not just the American people. Most importantly, the victims. They deserve to not have this be covered up in any capacity or for people to just stop looking. I don't know if there's certain information that has disappeared or wasn't there that they thought was there, but at the end of the day, all that we do have needs to be put out there in a responsible way. You have to protect the victims. That is something that's extremely important. And so it's got to be done in an orderly way. But there are too many people that have talked about this on the record saying that there's a lot of stuff out there to then all of a sudden say, all right, well, maybe we don't have it. Maybe it's not there. Whatever the story is, give it to everyone the same way and make sure you protect those victims. But they deserve justice. And I don't think this is going to be the end of the story. I think there's far too many people that are asking the questions that you just mentioned, that the senator mentioned, that I'm mentioning. And this should be nonpartisan. This should be non-political. You have children that apparently were sex trafficked and abused in horrific ways. That has nothing to do with politics. It should come out whether the people that were the perpetrators of this were liberal or conservative or agnostic. It doesn't matter. You need to protect the victims, and we need to make sure things like this never, ever, ever, ever happen again.
Right. Brian Tyler Cohen, I mean, I do think it's a nonpartisan issue. Obviously, nothing is these days, but I do think that it is completely baffling to me, just as a journalist, that you have this extraordinary scandal that rages away for many years. The main perpetrator dies in prison and is believed to have taken his own life, but the only person that's actually been made criminally accountable and is now languishing in prison is Ghislaine Maxwell, his kind of madame figure, who's a woman. So none of the other men who are widely believed to have been involved in this, none of them have been made accountable. What's your view of this?
Yeah, I mean, my view is that this is a con job by this administration. All of these people, Kash Patel, Alina Habba, Dan Bongino, Donald Trump, all of them came forward and said that this was a priority for them because they were stringing their supporters along. And then the moment they get into power, here we are in a situation where the whole thing is just closed and we have no further information on this. And yet, look, I think it would be fools to be surprised. I mean, this is a guy, Jeffrey Epstein, who Trump himself palled around with for years. This is a guy who Epstein himself called his closest friend for 10 years. His club. This is a guy who Jeffrey Epstein said was his closest friend for 10 years. This is a guy who Donald Trump appointed as his Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, who handed him a sweetheart deal, a non-prosecution agreement where he was out of prison 6 out of 7 days a week. So, look, Trump can say what he wants on the campaign trail in the lead up when he needs to get everybody's votes and pander to the base. But at the end of the day, he's the guy in charge. And suddenly the about face from everybody in his administration, the buck falls to one person.
I think that was the best way that Brian Tyler Cohen could have handled an interruption like that, is just completely fucking ignore it. Maybe if he forces him to engage with it, I would like to see how he engages with that. But one of the nice things about Brian Tyler Cohen is that he's a process bro, so he's going to follow the rules really, really strictly, and I think that's okay sometimes. I think him just kind of trucking through any interruption, I think that was smart. It was smart. Don't even hook on to any distractions that they throw out on. And also, I mean, it would be one thing if this was like a less structured thing, but throwing out jabs like that is just, come on.
It's not Alina Habba.
Not jabs, like interrupting him.
Or Carolyn Levitt or Dan Bongino or Kash Patel. It's Trump himself.
Right. I mean, Natalie, the interesting thing in terms of the timeline here is that when Elon Musk fell out pretty spectacularly and suddenly with Donald Trump, one of the things he posted on his X platform was, bombshell, the biggest bombshell is that Trump's in the Epstein files, right? And that was only a few weeks ago. And since then, there seems to have been a concerted effort for this story to just go away. Now, these two things may be completely unconnected. There may be nothing more to it other than Trump obviously was seen around Epstein. They clearly were very friendly for a while. I think he used his plane several times. I don't think that's in dispute. But there does seem to be a weird timeline here of Elon Musk saying that publicly and everything getting shut down a few weeks later. Am I reading too much into this?
Well, look, I think this is very quickly approaching. I mean, we've already passed debacle territory, but just outright grift. And that's probably not something that you would expect me to say, but this is just absolutely reprehensible. I think if you look at what really the MAGA base, the people who elected President Trump, what their sort of concerns have been these past few months is that the administration is not moving fast enough, right? They're not content with the press releases and the tweets. They want to see prison sentences and actual accountability for people that they believe committed crimes. Now, we've hit the point where we're not even getting the press releases or the strongly worded letters. We're getting weird, undated, unnamed memos being released over holiday weekends to legacy media outlets trying to bury it in Axios instead of working with all the new media outlets that the White House, pumped and talked so openly and heavily about being in and around the White House. I mean, this is a bedrock issue. I agree it's nonpartisan, it's non-political to want to get justice for the victims, but I also think that this is something that is both hyper-partisan and hyper-political, because what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, whether it's a foreign intel operation or domesticide or joint operation, has direct ramifications in probably the policies that we've seen being rolled out, whether through blackmail indirectly or directly through a lot of the political leaders in this nation. I would just say, as someone who has been on shows, co-hosted with a lot of the people, the clips that we've played of people who have called out Jeffrey Epstein for years and made millions of dollars off of it, it is absolutely reprehensible and it is a complete grift. And you have now, in their words, probably become the deep state. If you're going to run cover for this and you think that the MAGA audience is dumb enough to not, be able to go back 2 months and see the comments you were making on Fox News, we need to get this right. I don't even know if I have faith in Pam Bondi anymore, but this is a really, really concerning moment for MAGA.
Yeah, Destiny, it is fascinating to see how a lot of the most diehard Trump supporters in the kind of podcast, YouTube, influencer world, they've turned pretty vengefully against him and the administration over this. What do you make of it?
So here's the reality. The reality is, I keep hearing people like Joe Rogan saying the conspiracy theorists ended up being right about everything. They weren't. They were wrong about basically every single thing. There was no massive election fraud. There were no mass deaths from the COVID vaccine. There is no evidence that it was manufactured in a laboratory. There is no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered by somebody. The reality is every single thing I said is true, and I will debate you on any platform over that. So please stop. Please stop.
You're saying wasn't true.
You have no idea what you're. You have no idea.
Well, hang on, Destiny, hang on, Destiny, hang on.
Please stop.
Stupid.
Hang on, Destiny.
Let me finish my point. Excuse me. Let me finish my point. The problem is that the problem is that you guys spent so much time spreading these conspiracies.
I think I saw Destiny talk about this appearance on Piers Morgan, saying that it's probably going to be his last because he's going to be unhinged. Right as soon as he comes in, just the fucking screaming over Piers. I know he's brought up that that's like kind of taboo. You're allowed to talk over any of the four except for Piers. It's going to be a long hour.
That when you finally wound up, sir, I don't even know if you know. Do you even believe that viruses and germs are real? I'm not actually sure. Please stop.
I do.
The problem is that conservatives spent all this time. Conservatives spent all this time.
You would understand
conservatives spent all. Well, if you want to bring me on your show, I'll talk about it anytime, anywhere. Okay. Conservatives spent all this time. I don't insult
my audience with stupid
Well,
comments.
hang on. Let me jump in. Let me just jump in on this point.
Excuse me. Can I wait? Hold on. Wait.
Destiny. Let me. Well, you made a series of statements there about.
And I'm almost done with one sentence. Conservatives spent all this time with all these conspiracies, and then as soon as they got into office and they no longer had a deep state to blame, all of a sudden there was no election fraud evidence. There was no evidence about Hunter Biden being conspiratorial.
Why won't this dude let him finish? This dude's just so antsy to cut people off. Wow.
with Ukraine or Russia, there was no evidence of Epstein being murdered, and that's what's happened.
Okay.
They are now the deep state. They have every part of the government under
Okay.
control, and they have no evidence for any
But
of their
here's
claims.
the
And
problem.
that's it.
Here's the problem. You've made a series of statements there alleging that all these things are pure conspiracy theories and there's no evidence for it. And yet it is widely now accepted that actually it is more likely than not that the coronavirus, COVID-19, was started in that lab. That is now widely accepted. That's not a conspiracy theory.
It's not. That is a conspiracy.
It began as a conspiracy theory.
I promise you, there is no scientific evidence. There is no compelling intelligence community evidence that is the case.
So you think,
If
Destiny,
you
to be clear,
away all the samples,
hang on, you've had your say. Let me have mine. Let me finish my sentence. No, here's the thing, Destiny. You think it's literally a conspiracy theory that COVID-19, which was originally said to have started in a wet market 1 mile from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where it later transpired they were testing new coronaviruses. You think it is more likely it started with a bat in the wet market next door than it started in the lab where they're literally testing new coronaviruses? You think that's a mad conspiracy? Because I would say the mad conspiracy is that it's the bat a mile away.
I'm gonna go with the wet market that was 30 minutes away in a densely populated city where all of the first cases started.
It's less than a mile away.
Sponsored by the Chinese Communist Party. I'm just curious.
30 minutes away. Chinese Communist Party. Sir, you are an absolute idiot. I can't believe you would say that.
No, are they like? Is it like when you do your shows like brought to you by the Chinese Communist Party?
Just to be clear, that it's funny that you say it's funny that you say Communist Party, right? Just to be clear, the residents of Kerr County for the floods that we were just discussing rejected utilizing ARPA funds for years to put up. It's so funny. Ted Cruz talked about an emergency siren system. They didn't want to use money from the Biden administration because of all of these crazy conspiracies that you guys spread about things like COVID, because they thought if they accepted the money, the transcripts are public. The transcripts are public, sir. I'm sorry, hold on. Are you telling me they didn't say that? Are you telling me they didn't say that?
We're kicking your ass and you made up something to try to go back and use kids that have died in a tragedy to cover the fact that you cannot defend your Wuhan point of view because it's made out of Chinese communist propaganda. I think everyone watching can see that now. And I think you realize you stepped in it and you said something that wasn't true. And everyone that has a brain on this panel is calling you out for it because it was such a stupid thing to say. I'm sorry that happened to you, but you don't use kids dying in a flood to try to cover for your dumbass comment.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
By the way, I want to bring the others in. I want to bring the others in too. Hang on. Don't all shadow once.
So everybody can see who's running from it, okay?
Don't all shadow once. Let me bring Brian back in here. See, this is the interesting thing, I think, Brian. I read what Joe Rogan put out about conspiracy theories.
It might honestly be a little better that Destiny's taking such an unhinged approach because it's going to make Brian Tyler Cohen look so fucking good. This debate panel is going to make him look so good, I think.
Saying...
assuming that he doesn't match Destiny's Freak, which is, I guess, a possibility, but probably not, though.
What he was saying was, don't just dismiss them all out of hand, was his real theme about this. Because a lot of things that are alleged to be conspiracy theories, and the COVID lab one is a classic example where that began as being something that could get people cancelled if they even dared suggest it, and is now, the US CIA believes that a research-related origin in Wuhan in the lab is more likely than the theory it came from animals. So the CIA now believe that. So it's no longer a conspiracy theory. But Brian, I think it goes to a wider point, is that take the Epstein story, right? I don't know whether he took his life or was murdered or whatever. It seems that most people who've looked at this professionally believe he took his life. But there's this weird video with the missing minute and Pam Bondi's torturous explanation for what that may be about. There's also the undeniable fact that he surrounded himself with a myriad number of famous, rich, powerful people who would have a vested interest in shutting him up. That is indisputable. There are also all these rumors flying around, which, even Alan Dershowitz thought there may be some merit to this when I interviewed him on Monday, that he may have been some kind of Israeli Mossad agent of some sort. You put all this together, and again, it's very easy to say, well, it's all a conspiracy theory, to say that he did anything other than he took his life and nobody else was involved. There's no client list. Nobody else abused these girls. It's over. I don't think that's the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy that's going on right now, it seems to me, is a conspiracy of shutting this down of silencing debate about it, wanting to move on, and for actually nobody other than Ghislaine Maxwell to be held accountable when it is. I mean, look, take Prince Andrew, right, in my country. Prince Andrew paid Virginia Giuffre a reported $11 million, right, but claimed he never met her, right? But there's a photograph of him with his arm around her when she was 17, 18 in a London townhouse. Now, you know, call me a conspiracy theorist, but you don't give $11 million to someone you've never met, right? I don't care who you are. So, again, a lot of the stuff swirling around here doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't think it's good enough for people just to say it's all conspiracy theory. So shut up and move on. Your thoughts?
I would completely agree. And in fact, we saw yesterday when the White House was posed these questions, Trump freaked out and said, whoa, why are we still talking about this? Like, can't we talk about something? You've got Donald Trump, who has spent every waking minute of the past almost decade talking about the water pressure in his shower and toilet. That guy suddenly doesn't want to engage in a topic that he's spoken about before. We've heard him go on and on about immigrants being rapists and murderers every day. We've heard him go on and on for the better part of a decade about Hillary Clinton's crimes and the Biden crime family. This guy repeats himself like to the ends of the earth. And yet on the issue of Epstein, which by the way was an issue that his campaign predicated so much of their focus on, that they garnered so much support from their audience based on, now he doesn't want to talk about it. So yeah, I mean, I guess the expression that would come to mind is a hit dog will holler.
Well, also, again, I'll repeat, this follows just literally whatever it was 3-4 weeks ago, Elon Musk in their big public spat suddenly posting, you know, the big bombshell is that Trump's in the Epstein file. So it might be
a move, by the way, that started a conversation about deporting Elon Musk, in case you were wondering whether there was any there. So yeah, I mean, clearly that he hit a mark by or he hit a nerve by saying stuff like that. But
to be clear, just so we all know where I'm at here, I do think that a lot of the things around Elon or around Epstein really, really lack the amount of evidence, and I fucking hate like the trend of conspiracist thinking that leads to, you know, being so confidently right and so more like morally grandstandy on things that actually have very, very little evidence. So I do think that's a problem. Although I also think that like Democrats using this kind of well, Democrats or liberals or whatever you want to call them, using this kind of like appealing to this conspiracist style of thinking in order to pull voters away from Trump, I think is also super valuable. Because realistically, I don't know what to do about like reprogramming conspiracy theorists' brains. I don't know.
But I mean, for this administration to try and brush it under the rug, and Natalie, I do agree with what you said about there being a lot of grifters. I mean, we've seen Dan Bongino and Kash Patel focus so much energy, so many resources, so much time on this exact issue, only for them to come out and say, oh, well, there's there's absolutely nothing here. But I would also caution, Natalie, to not put the onus, because I've been seeing this more and more on the right, to not put all of the responsibility on Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is an appendage of Donald Trump. She is not calling the shots. Nobody in this administration is calling the shots. This entire cabinet, this entire White House exists to serve Donald Trump. They exist to basically be extensions of Trump himself, and no one will ever act independently.
I don't even necessarily know if I think I don't know if that's true. I've seen some pretty compelling, like the way that Donald Trump interacts with his cabinet members, specifically, not Pam Bondi in this case is absolutely subservient to Trump or whoever Trump is subservient to. I absolutely agree with that. But people like Stephen Miller, people like, even kind of still Steve Bannon, even though he's not technically a cabinet member, people like Scott Bassett, who's the person that they put in charge of the OMB? Was that Scott Bassett? Yeah, Russ Vought, people like that, I feel like, saying that they are just there to serve Donald Trump. I don't know if I agree with that. It almost feels like the other way around, where like Donald Trump is there because, you know, people like Russ Vought, people like Scott Bassett, people like Stephen Miller can kind of use Trump as a puppet. But when it comes to people like Kash Patel, when it comes to people like Pam Bondi, when it comes to people like like Caroline Leavitt, those are all absolutely 1000% there, just there to curtail to Trump. Which Caroline Leavitt, that's kind of what you're supposed to do as press secretary. But like Pam Bondi, I more or less agree, is just like a political arm of Donald Trump at this point.
Of him. And so
but I don't know if I'd say that every cabinet position is there to serve at the direction of Donald Trump. I don't know if I agree with that.
If accountability is really what you're looking for here, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that this is all being done in good faith, then let's not delude ourselves into thinking that Pam Bondi is the final word, or that the buck stops with her, when the buck always stops with Donald Trump.
I'm sure that there's merit to that. Let me come to you, Natalie, because Elon Musk has also suggested that Steve Bannon, that you work with, obviously, is in the Epstein files too. What can you say about that? I mean, what's the reaction to that, first of all?
Convenient.
Well, I'll always let Steve speak for himself, but I can guarantee you, Steve is certainly not in the Epstein files. Perhaps Elon needs to both be deported and sued for defamation. But look, I think
he's literally doing the thing. Okay.
In a rare moment, I probably actually agree with Brian. I think that was why the Trump administration wanted to prioritize transparency, at least in their rhetoric, right from the first days. They wanted the American people to be able to decide on all of this. And I think that sort of compounded with what they were trying to do, right, with the new media initiative, bringing in these other voices to try to, I think, go away from just having legacy media outlets dominate certain narratives, or sort of setting the parameters for what stories are of interest to the American people. And I think when you talk about transparency, I don't know if the Chinese Communist Party, or right now the Trump administration, or whoever it may be, deep state, take your pick, is engaging in more of a cover-up when it comes to whether it's the Epstein files or the origins of COVID, respectively. I think that's a rather asinine point. But to link it all back to what you were saying, Piers, I think labeling...
I hope, please, Destiny, don't bite... Don't bite on that, please. I don't want an hour of fucking lab leak versus wet market origin of COVID debate. I really, really don't. I mean, I guess I can see why, but God, please don't bite, just for my sake.
These things at the onset, rather, a conspiracy theory, compounding with, I think, a lot of sort of the censorship apparatus that we saw spring up under Joe Biden. You sort of get that same reaction to what people had when President Trump was sitting in his cabinet meeting and saying, why are people interested in this? Why are people looking at that? It just makes people double down. So even if you want to be pragmatic, respectfully, Destiny, saying that there's no evidence, I think you can agree that there is at least one piece of evidence that may intimate that COVID-19 developed in the Wuhan Institute of Virology under Shi Zhengli. I just think these draconian statements make people not more likely to sort of entertain the other side of the fence, but it makes people think that there actually are conspiracies going on to cover up information.
Yeah, I would agree. And Destiny, I'm going to take you up on...
Hang on,
Destiny, I'm going to ask you a question.
She said in 2020,
Destiny, I'm going to ask you a question. So
this was under Biden? I'm pretty sure that was under Trump. So if you want to blame anybody for the censorship, it would have been Trump. I know that
Let me ask you a question, Destiny.
Who's president there, but...
Destiny, I want to ask you a question. So a woman called Kylie Jane Kramer posted on X, I've been trying to wrap my head around how the flooding in Texas became so devastating so quickly. Why not evacuate? Then I saw this. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said the Guadalupe River rose 26 feet in just 46 minutes around 4 a.m. That doesn't even seem natural. To which you reposted this, and you put your own words. I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN, promo code Destiny, to get around the Texas porn ban.
Brownie face.
On reflection, do you think that was grotesquely tasteless thing to be posting?
Absolutely not. The hand wringing here. Oh my God! Stop. If you want to talk about dead children, then you should talk about the residents of Kerr County who rejected using ARPA funds to build the very siren system that Ted Cruz was over here virtue signaling about. Now that the kids are dead, last I checked, the siren system isn't bringing anybody back to life. Okay, the very same system that they could have built for the better part of the last decade. They didn't want to touch those ARPA funds because they thought that if they did, Biden would go and steal their homes, which is the exact same lie that was told in North
said.
Carolina when people were rejecting FEMA
It's
funds
sick, man.
because they thought that if the
All right,
government
well,
was giving them
okay,
money for their houses, they'd
Piers,
steal it.
can I
If
jump
you
in here?
want to talk about grotesque and ghoulish things that are being said, you should
It's
talk
what
about
you
people
put
who are making
online. I agree with you.
decisions
It's
that
what
are
you wrote
actually
online. It is grotesque.
destroying
It's
their
disgusting.
counties.
But I mean, I
Hey,
guess that's
hey,
what
just
you
get-
do. You
How long
talk
have people like you? How long have people like you?
2
How long have
a.m.
people
with
said if we spend less money in Ukraine, you guys are going to spend more money investing in things like infrastructure in the United States? Where is that money
Again,
going?
if you're
We just had
having to use
another. We
Ukraine
just had
to
another
defend your
massive
sick
debt increase.
marks
Another
about
massive
people
debt increase
dying,
for more
knock
tax
yourself
cuts
out.
for wealthy people. Congratulations!
me
Thank
jump
you
in
so
here.
much.
All right,
How's
let
the
me get a
deficit?
Ben.
How's the
Let me get a
deficit doing?
Ben.
How's
All right,
that
let's-
deficit doing?
Don't talk
Wait, I
over
wanna
each
hear-
other.
I wanna hear, how's our deficit doing? Is it going up or down? Is it
Don't talk
definitely going up
over
or
each
down?
other. But just to be clear, Destiny, you
There are
don't.
no answers. Just to be clear, no, just to be
Destiny.
clear,
I'm
not
gonna
no, no,
talk-
I'm not gonna
Please
sit-
stop
I'm not going to sit
talking.
here and argue about jokes
All
when
right.
these guys are spreading
It's not-
lies
you don't joke
that are
when
leading to the
children are
actual
dead, dude.
destruction of these. Oh, except you guys do when it happens in LA when it's about the wildfires. You
I
guys
don't.
make jokes when
I'm not a
politicians
sick,
are getting
vile
killed
person
in
like you.
Minnesota.
Go
I'm
look
sure.
at my
Oh,
ex
just the
account.
rest of your
I don't
party
delete
is? Just the rest of your party
I
is?
don't delete
Don't
tweets.
talk over
For
each
real.
other because we
There's none of
can't
that
hear
there.
you.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
All right, but
So,
Destiny,
Piers,
just to
let me
be
say a couple
clear,
things here.
Destiny, just to be clear, you don't regret posting. I heard God kill those kids because they were using
I'm not going to sit here and
NordVPN
argue
to get
about
around the
jokes on
Texas
Twitter
porn ban.
while you allow the very same misinformation to spread on this program that leads to
Sick
people
person.
not putting up siren systems, okay, because they think that Biden is going to go steal
That
their
wasn't my
homes.
That's not what
question.
they
It is
said.
absolutely insane.
Wasn't my
I think
question.
it's insane that you want to go and hand-wring liberals over jokes that are not even
Piers.
half as crazy as some of the things these conservatives say.
Okay, but just to be
Rather
clear,
than
you
actually
don't
focusing
regret
on the
doing
main
it.
There's no
substance of the
tweet
issue.
like that out
Absolutely
there.
not.
Because I'm
Just to be
Absolutely
clear,
not.
Destiny,
Absolutely not.
just to be clear, you don't regret posting it.
No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
Ben Ferguson.
Piers, a couple things here that I think there's proper information that should get out there. This is an area that I go to often.
There's some level kind of merit to doing like the edge posting that Destiny does, where it's like, you say something really, really fucked up, conservatives end up freaking the fuck out about it. You get on big shows like Piers Morgan, people like, Andrew Wilson are clamoring for a chance to have a debate with you, to own you on some sort of, mainstream media thing, because you're getting a lot of mainstream media coverage. I think Benny Johnson even reposted that tweet. And then whenever you get the chance to be basically brought on to these kind of shows to be like flogged, publicly flogged, pointing out hypocrisy, there's some level of validity to that. The problem is that it's just going to fall on deaf ears. Like it's mostly there just for personal satisfaction, rather than like, I don't know if I highly, highly doubt that there's any amount of efficacy when it comes to messaging like this. And I mean, I feel like that was very clearly made to me the first time around, when he made the joke about the Corey comparator guy who got shot at the Trump rally. Like that made some people that made some people, more aware of the January 6th stuff, but I don't think that was like I don't know if he reached a lot of people that he wouldn't have otherwise by just doing the same kind of conversations that he was doing, like he was, doing prior. Even if he wanted to up the rhetoric a little bit, I don't know if this was the answer. I don't know if this strategy is the answer.
Often, it's an area that I've taken my kids dozens and dozens of times.
But also, while I do absolutely think it's in poor taste, it is a joke. And the idea that people will hold other people more accountable for jokes than actual real policy positions, is not good. But yeah, and when you look at the intentions of Destiny's joke, it clearly wasn't actually to just say like, fuck kids or whatever.
It's a very small rural community. When it rains there's always flooding because there's a lot of rock in the ground and the water doesn't absorb in the ground. So you have flash floodings that happen very quickly. I've been there when this happens. This was a once in a lifetime 100-year flood. If you want to know about the funding for the system, it's an extremely small community and the price tag for it is very, very big compared to the tax base that they have in this small community. It is not because of the Matt Boone stuff this guy's talking about. That is not why the community decided 6 years ago to not do it, even though they wanted to. It was a cost issue. What's going to happen now is you're going to have state funds and federal funds, and that system will happen. But go back to this once in a lifetime flood that took place. No one could have prepared or
I will say that was a very, very classy answer from this guy. Holy shit. This guy's looked really, really stupid throughout the whole thing, but this is a really, really classy answer back to Destiny, who seems really, really fucking crazy right now.
thought this was going to happen. People bought homes on a river where there was constant flooding, where they're built high enough up that flooding has never gotten there before in the history of their lifetime. So this is a tragedy that took place. And by the way, this is personal because I know people who lost children. There are funerals that are taking place.
Just to be clear, you're saying that there are
talking about a funeral for a second?
You're saying
Let him finish,
coming up like
Destiny.
15 times. So you're saying there are no citizens saying that they don't want to use the American Rescue Plan funds. They didn't want to use that money because they thought Biden would take their homes.
I'm going to go back to what I said.
That transcript doesn't exist.
Can you let Ben finish, given he was talking about the funerals of dead children?
I have friends whose kids
Please let him
died. You don't
finish
care.
what he was saying.
He doesn't care. As long as he admits he doesn't give a fuck about the dead kids. That's okay.
You know what, Destiny? You don't give a fuck about the dead kids, do you?
Admit it. I do.
Because you thought it was funny. You thought it was
I'm not the one
funny.
voting to take money away from
You
these
thought
things.
it was
I think
funny
it's
to go
fun-
on X and talk about,
Piers,
I heard God
excuse
killed
me,
those kids
excuse me,
because they
excuse me,
weren't
Piers,
using a
jokes on
NordVPN
Twitter
to get around the
don't kill
Texas
people.
porn ban.
From the
That is
party of I
disgusting.
thought comedy was
You're
legal
the one
again.
using dead
Jokes
children
on
in a
Twitter
grotesque
don't kill
manner.
people.
So let me just lay
Jokes
that down
on
for the
Twitter,
record.
Just to be clear, let me lay it down as well. How many people did my joke kill?
No,
You're
it's just
sick, man.
disgustingly tasteless.
Exactly.
You're a
Wait a minute.
sick man.
And then how many kids died because there's no siren system because people like this guy over here made up the lie that Biden was going to steal your homes if you accept the American Rescue Plan. If you accept American Rescue Plan money. Exactly.
I never
That's
made
the
that
difference.
up.
The difference is
I would
you're
like to
bullshit. The
hear
difference is
Ben.
that-
I would
the
like to
difference is
hear
that-
Ben
Yeah, that's
finish.
That's good. That was a good answer too. I don't know. I'm really, really conflicted on this. I don't know. It's a matter of messaging. It obviously would be hypocritical for these type of people. I don't know about like the pundits, but for Piers Morgan specifically, who has a show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, who touts the First Amendment, having protected speech, bringing on like Holocaust deniers because their perspectives are important. Like getting mad over a joke like this definitely feels a little the hypocritical, and I think Destiny, like what he just said, did point that out a lot. But at the same time, there are better ways to do it. It was a bad taste joke.
The story he was telling us when he was talking about the funerals of dead children. Let him finish that, please.
What do you mean we didn't have the funerals? Wouldn't that be better?
Can we mute him?
Rather than you talking about why you were right to crack a sick joke. Ben.
Okay. I go back to the point here. This flood did not ask if you were liberal or conservative, rich or poor, black or white, or anything else in between. People lost their lives, and many people lost their lives trying to save kids in an unprecedented flood. If we could go back, I'm sure this community would have said, we'll figure out a way to have the money. You're dealing with an area that has a lot of volunteer first responders and firefighters. Can I finish, please? Like maybe you'll learn something and not be such a tool.
You just lie.
You don't live there. You don't know. You've never been there. I've been there. I've talked to people. You don't know anybody that died in this flood. You're a POS. That's who you are. I would like to finish my point, Piers.
Finish it, Ben.
Thank you. There are people that died in this flood helping try to save the lives of others. There are elderly that died. I know people that lost children in this flood. They would love to go back and have a different warning system. By the way, we don't know if the warning system would have changed anything at all. The warnings came out early. Unfortunately, there's spotty cell phone there. Everyone's talked about this. I'm sure there's people in the community that wish they would have maybe done something different in the past. Hindsight's 2020. But to say that the community decided not to do this because of some insane theory you've come up with, which is not true or based in fact. It was based on a small rural community with not a lot of tax base and a very expensive price tag for something. And for you to sit here.
I mean, this is he's literally saying it was providing the funding. So,
and to somehow decide that this is a place to save.
Poor Brian, he looks so conflicted. Brian is just like me. Listen, Me and Brian are soul sisters. All right, I agree. I feel exactly like Brian looks in this. This is exactly how I'd look if I were on this panel.
Something so sick. I'm assuming you don't have kids. I have 6-year-old and 8-year-old kids. If you talk to parents that are planning their child's funerals are happening tomorrow and the next day here in Houston, I think you would have a little bit of a soul and a heart for them. But instead, you're out here putting this crap out there, and it's really sad. I hope you get help.
Let me bring in Brian. Brian, I want to talk just about a
Don't
wider
bring in
point
Brian.
connected to what Destiny posted.
Just the facts, rainfall intensity in Texas has been increasing measurably since the 90s. I've graphed it myself, but these rural people don't believe in the science and politicians lie about it. Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely some level of accountability that politicians play in this. Again, it's just a messaging issue. I don't know. I don't know that Destiny's approach is the right one here.
For which he shows no regret at all, which is entirely his choice, but I can say my feelings, which I have. You know, a former appointee to a Houston city board said that Camp Mystic, where most of these poor young girls were at the time, was white-only, conservative and Christian, said Sade Perkins, a former member of the Houston Food Insecurity Board, said in a TikTok video. So take a look.
I know I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but Camp Mystic is a whites-only girls Christian camp. They don't even have a token Asian. They don't have a token black person. If this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, this would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give a f***. And all these white people, the parents of these little girls, would be saying things like they need to be deported.
Now, A, I think that's completely untrue, what she said. B, it's completely disgusting to say that in the aftermath of this when these poor girls, many of them are still missing, presumed dead.
Well, Destiny's... Oh my god. Destiny is a sex criminal. I can't believe people take him seriously in any political way. He's literally a streamer with no qualifications and sex crime charges. He doesn't have sex crime charges. But I agree. You know, I think that Destiny should castrate himself. I think that would be the best for both his political career and the surrounding people's political engagement for it. I think that he should absolutely just chemically castrate himself so he doesn't need to have sex with anybody ever again. Because I mean, you know, pretty clearly shown that he's very highly inappropriate with it. But I mean, the idea that he has nothing to offer, I don't think is true. I mean, like, when it comes to new age political pundits on the center left, he's probably one of the more fact-based ones, other than, you know, Pisco or somebody like that who doesn't have as much mainstream reach. Destiny is incredibly intelligent. The problem is A, his personal life is really fucking crazy. B, he can't really outlive the Call of Duty lobbies or whatever fucking StarCraft lobbies that he, you know, kind of got his feet wet in, and that drives a lot of people away. And I understand that, and it's really, really hard for me to hold that against anybody because, you know, there's if the same opinions belong to somebody who didn't you know, say the N-word kind of frequently, you know, send you know, sexual videos of people without clear consent to randos on Discord, who, you know, does all of this kind of shit, I would absolutely be 1000% super in favor of him. He's got his problems, but to say that he's got nothing to offer, that he's not like a good political mind, I think is oversimplifying, and it's probably just because there it may be an ulterior motive there.
But then there's a pediatrician called Dr. Christina B. Probst, who's been fired after posting on social media. She's a pediatrician, this woman. May all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry. Kerr County MAGA voted to get FEMA. They deny climate change. May they get what they voted for. Bless their hearts. And my question, Brian, putting that together with...
The hydrological data has to be adjusted for dams and runoff changes, but the frequency and intensity is clear in hydrological data. The flood versus the drought cycle is apparent and no one cares. I graphed a whole century of USGS data on tributaries and have seen graphs for rainfall compiled by others specifically for Texas. Sometimes they ask why it rains so hard these days. Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I
What
buy it.
Destiny
I don't
posted,
know.
Which, again, for the record, I thought was disgusting, Destiny. I've told you. You can defend it as much as you like, but it was just a sick, awful thing to post. And if you had any humanity about you, you would delete it. But that's entirely your decision. But Brian, I've seen this on the other side too. I've seen this during the Biden administration when terrible things happen, that there's a race for people to get political, to play a race card or play this card or play that card, or just show a shocking inhumanity. And it's the very worst of society when that happens. What do we do about this? I think it's fueled by social media. People wouldn't be able to get the audience for this kind of thing without TikTok, without Facebook, without...
I think a lot of people also have an issue where it feels callous to say, but everything is political. You have to expect that if a politician is in charge of caring for their people and the people aren't adequately cared for, then that becomes a political issue for that reason. This is a political issue. Asking somebody to take a situation of ineptitude from a state government and make it not political just kind of disregards the whole point of politics. That's all. This is the whole point of politics, is caring for the people of the states. So I don't like the framing that, why can't something ever be not political? Well, it's because this is a result of politics. That being said, obviously, like saying that, this is a white supremacist camp, who cares? Or like, NordVPN/Destiny is why, God killed all of these kids, or anything along the lines of that is something that I'm not going to agree with, obviously. But also to make an issue like this seem like it's completely divorced from people's engagement with politics is either whitewashing the effects of politics and how actually important political discussion is, or is playing cover.
X and so on. But it's a sick thing that this goes on when these terrible tragedies happen.
Look, I obviously can't speak for what some random person on the internet tweeted about Camp Mystic. All I can say is look, I try to have some sense of the fact that there are as many Republicans in California as there are in Texas, and there are as many Democrats in Texas as there are in major big blue bastions. And so I try to focus on that and recognize that a lot of these people are a lot of these people are fighting against the same system that I would be fighting against, and I wouldn't obviously not attack folks in Texas, but I would point out that Ben said that these storms aren't partisan, and that we have to try. I can't remember what Ben said, but the reality is that while the wildfires were raging in California, Ben and Ted had a podcast where they just attacked Governor Newsom and Karen Bass, and that was while the fires were still raging. And so, spare us the grandstanding and the virtue signaling about how this stuff doesn't get partisan. This was here's Ted Cruz's.
This is why Brian Tyler Cohen is the GOAT. He doesn't need to do these kind of statements. He could just say, hey, this is an exact example of your hypocrisy. I'm not going to stoop down to your level. Destiny's kind of approach of literally stooping down to their level and pointing out the hypocrisy, I don't think is going to hit as hard for a lot of normie viewers. It will hit definitely as hard for people who are like super online, super on Twitter, which I think might be a pretty good niche for Destiny's to settle into anyway. But I feel like the people who watch Piers Morgan are going to be much more compelled by Brian Tyler Cohen's approach.
Tweet. Right now, everyone is horrified watching the LA wildfires. In today's episode of Verdict, we break down the catastrophic policy decisions made by Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass. While the wildfires were still raging in Los Angeles, while I was standing on my roof in LA, spraying down my house with a hose to make sure that my house wouldn't set on fire when the fire was down the street within 1 mile of my house.
The only problem with him is he's a little stutterer, but I am too, so that's okay.
This show.
And so Ted Cruz decided to come out and make his entire episode, which, by the way, there is not.
So I'll tell you what we said, because I was on that show.
Excuse me, let him finish. You cried so much about people interrupting. Let him finish.
I know. Ben is like arguing for Destiny.
You
to be
said we
muted,
did
and now
a
he can't shut
show.
the
You're
fuck
putting
up.
words in our mouth of something we didn't
I'm not.
say.
I read the tweet verbatim. That's what I did.
Did you listen
But
to
while
the
Ted-
show?
while-
No,
I
Did you read
actually.
the book?
So I'll tell
Did
you
you
what
watch
we
the
did do,
Lifetime
Piers.
movie? Did you see the
What we
documentary?
did was we talked
There is
about
not a
the
situation
decisions
where
that were
Ted Cruz
made
will not.
in
There is not a
favor
situation
of-
where Ted Cruz will
Well,
not.
let Ben say
promote
what
his
he thinks he
podcast.
said. Let's
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
Ben.
I'll redo the show in a very quick form. What we talked about were the decisions that were made with underbrush not being cleared out and the massive warnings that were coming. We did that. We also talked about what the fire chief said about those warnings.
Yeah, but all of a sudden it's not appropriate for them to do the same exact thing for Ted Cruz. That's the difference.
Talked about the lack of water pressure. We talked about them cleaning up some of the holding tanks. We talked about also the fact that there were certain things that were done to save fish over having the ability to fight these types of fires and everything that went into it. We talked about the decisions that were made that then made for a poor response that made you have to be on your roof, as you described it, spraying down because there wasn't adequate
So you
decisions
think-
that were
you
made
think- you
with
think
those
the
winds
reason
that
that I
came
was on
through
my
with the
roof-
underbrush.
You think the reason that I was on my roof was because while the Santa Ana winds were ripping through LA at 100 miles per hour and 50,000 acres of LA were burning, that some bogus fucking story about the smelt, about Delta smelt is why LA was burning? You're a joke,
No, I
bro.
think that-
You
I
have
think that-
no
I said-
idea
I
what
said
you
that
are.
no-
You
I
have
gave you
no
5
idea
different
what you were
reasons. I gave you
talking
5
about.
different
You have no
reasons.
idea what you're talking about.
I'm
And
quoting the people
there is
in
no-
your
there is
government
no
in
amount of-
California.
There is no. Ben, there is no amount of water pressure
Again,
in the
go
world through
listen-
these hydrants that are
I
going to be
didn't say
able to
that.
put out
I didn't say
50,000
that.
acres of fire.
I
Yes, you
didn't
did.
say
You're talking
that.
about smelt, and
No.
you're talking about no water pressure.
I didn't say that.
But let me
if you turn on every hydrant, you know this. You lose water pressure. That's not what I said, by the way.
Let me grant you the larger point, though, and I think the point that you're trying to make, I'll grant you this, even though you don't deserve it, and you're just going to spew a bunch of bullshit about
Please
smelt
don't give
and
me
water
any charity,
pressure.
okay, brother?
But let me grant you the larger point and say that there are still things that people could do, and I'm not here to argue that California did a perfect job or does a perfect job with regard to how they manage all of this stuff. But to that point, then, do you think it's maybe a little stupid that Trump would fire 10% of NOAA's workforce, which is about 1,300 staffers and researchers? Do you think it's a good idea, then, that Trump called for reducing NOAA's workforce by a further 17%, which would be another 2,000 staffers and researchers? Do you think it's a good idea that Trump slashed 20% of FEMA's workforce?
Yeah,
Do you think it's a smart idea to phase out
respond.
FEMA completely? Do you think it's a smart idea that 25% of NWS's stations lack a meteorologist? All of this stuff is
so let's go back to the basics here. If you're asking about the size of government and the president making a decision to reduce the size of government when it makes sense, I have no issue with that. By the way, the staffing and the
You're presupposing. I have no issue with cutting government size when it makes sense. Yeah, if it makes sense, everyone's going to agree with it. Necessarily, it makes sense. What? That's not what he's saying. He's saying these people were directly relevant as to these natural disasters not being able to be accounted for in an efficient manner. Trump cut them. The whole point that Brian's making is that it doesn't make sense. Don't presuppose that it makes sense. That's like saying, like, oh, yeah, why do you support Donald Trump cutting the size of government? You're like, oh, well, I mean, I support Donald Trump cutting the size of government when it's good, so... Thanks, buddy. Thanks. Wow. What a valuable addition.
Put out by many on the left and the media was that there was understaffing when it came to the warnings that were coming out from the National Weather Service. That was a lie. They were staffed above normal.
And he's not going to engage with anything that Brian Tyler Cohen just brought up because he never brought up the National Weather Service, not even once in that statement. So why not address what Brian Tyler Cohen is actually saying?
Staffing levels. They held people over the day before and the night of the storm in Texas. They had double the staff on staff when the storms were hitting. There's a timeline of all the texts that were going out and the warnings that were going out. And so you're acting as if Donald Trump caused a problem with the flood and the response to it in the warning system, which is a lie. When you have double the staff, which is the protocol, by the way, under Obama, under Biden, and under George Bush. So this is nonpartisan and everyone showed up for work and people were held over. You're now just trying to score political points on the lives of dead children for political reasons.
Okay,
I
let me
do
ask.
think
I
it's
said-
better
I
than
said-
that.
I said, let me
hang on,
grant-
hang on,
I said,
hang
let
on. Let
me-
me bring in Natalie because she should be waiting patiently. Natalie, when I read out what Destiny posted,
Don't cuck out because now he's not going to be able to get to respond to this. He's tying it back for this fucking lady who hasn't added anything to Destiny's tweet. Let him respond.
yeah, what was your feeling about that?
Oh my god.
Well, I think that's probably the textbook definition of what it means to be a grifter, trying to profit off of dead children by pumping NordVPN and your promo code. It's reprehensible. I'm
Just to be
pretty
clear, that's
sure
not my
you're an
promo code, and
atheist.
that's
You
not
don't
the
believe
definition
in
of a
God.
grifter.
You certainly
Okay,
don't
fine.
believe in traditional marriage. So I would expect nothing less that you would double down and defend it. Blows my mind. I mean, I agree comedy's important, but I don't think, no offense, maybe you shouldn't be a stand-up comedian if you want to start your career by posting about dead children. It's really not all that funny. And it really wasn't even a joke. You were trying to profit off of it. So I think that's sort of a compounding evilness to what you did.
What do we do, Natalie?
So real quick for compounding evilness, just so I could read this because entered into the record. Okay, I'm just curious if Ben wants to say is this quote fake? Okay, so there's hundreds of these quotes. All right, at a county meeting. Okay, where the citizens are giving.
As Destiny's lawyer, okay, he should have said that I'm not sponsored by NordVPN. I think he should have specified that maybe a little because this could genuinely be used as proof that, you know, there was actual real confusion about the trademark than the way that Destiny used it. So maybe you should have specified that.
Feedback on whether or not they should use the American Rescue Plan funds. All right. Citizen Mr. R says there's not just a lack of transparency, but the Biden administration is pulling the wool over our eyes. If we see what's actually written, we make a clear decision. This is wrong. Texas has been going in the right direction. I moved from Washington State a year ago. Washington is just falling lockstep with whatever this admin wants to do, and we're watching with clarity the damage. As far as COVID and the recovery money, the majority of the damage has been caused by the government. We're doing well. I'm a retired firefighter. EMS, I love law enforcement. Do no harm is going by the wayside. Let me finish one more sentence. Do no harm is going by the wayside from. We're all familiar with that, and it's heartfelt, but it's going by the wayside for now. What would be money that would go against everything that we believe? Whatever good is in it, I don't want it. Are you telling me that comment and the hundreds of others like it are fake? Can you give me a yes or no before you ramble about whatever irrelevant stuff is? Are those comments fake?
I'm going to go back to what I want to say. You said what you said. I'm going to say it.
Answer.
Number one,
this is why you
that's one. I'm answering the damn question, dude. Like, just chill for a second. Drink whatever hemp juice or that is. Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
All right. So number one, that's one person. Number two, if you weren't so dumb. If you weren't so dumb, if you weren't
scroll down and find another one if you want.
If you weren't good, you found two. If you weren't so dumb, go Google the size.
You think they don't exist?
Go Google the size of the Comfort, Texas City Hall. You can't fit hundreds of people in any meeting there, you moron. You found one. You act like there's thousands that showed up. They did not show up and say that on the record. Are there people that said things on the internet?
And then the
there
people
are
can
some.
go out.
But if you look at
over
how small
time, you
the
can bring
community
5 in and
is,
5 out. If you see a room that can only fit 10 people, did you know that 100 people can fit in that room if 10 go in and 10 leave?
I do.
Do we forget this now? We don't.
Again, if you understood the size of the town, which you don't because you don't care because you're literally trying to make money off of dead people.
You're the one who's
Texas,
getting kids
you
killed,
would
and I can't
know
wait for the
that
next
this is an insane thing that you're
disaster in
saying.
Texas.
You
the
moron.
next time the power grid freezes, the next time another flood happens, and dipshits like you were up here saying, "Could we have ever seen it coming?"
Make a living
but hey, you know what? At least
online.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is out here proposing legislation to stop the Jews from putting clouds in the sky. So thank God we have you guys working hard on the problem, okay, to stop the weather modification program
these people?
from Bill Gates. Thank
you stay
God.
up till 3 a.m. and watch the internet?
Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
Okay, Brian. Let's just talk on a bigger picture about because it's interesting to me the whole Epstein thing, for example, I think has been fueled the sequence.
This is the value that Destiny adds, by the way. Even when he's wrong, he's really good at showcasing people are just as wrong as him. Like, even when he's morally in the wrong, he's able to kind of work well on his feet under a lot of pressure to point out similar hypocrisies. Even if it doesn't make him look good, at least he's going to make it so everyone around him also doesn't look good. So that's part of the good part about him as well. He's almost like a kamikaze style debater where, like, listen, if I'm going down, everyone else except for Brian Tyler Cohen is coming down with me.
Events by what Elon Musk put on X, and he's now creating a third party. He says he is the America Party, It's never worked before, but we've never had somebody with his money or social media firepower to drive it. So I don't think it should be dismissed out of hand. How dangerous an enemy can Elon Musk turn out to be for Donald Trump? If, for example, in the midterms, he decides to aggressively support, anti-Trump candidates, for example, and is successful in doing that, and gets some resonance for this party, this third party, and then that moves forward with some momentum to a general election. I mean, how big could this get? What's your feeling about the Musk-Trump meltdown?
I think it could go both ways. You could make the argument that the reason Trump is president right now is because Elon Musk gave him $300 million and campaigned relentlessly in Pennsylvania, for example. So obviously there is a lot of weight that can be given to a candidate by virtue of endless funds. Elon has that. On the flip side, look, I mean, he put forward this threat that he was going to make sure that whoever voted for the big beautiful bill was primaried. They all voted for it except for Thomas Massey and Tom Tillis, and so they were not going to vote for it anyway. I'm sure that Elon's
and Rand
tweet
Paul.
and Rand Paul, Elon's tweet had no bearing on any of those three, and so you could also make the argument at the same time that his influence is waning in the Republican Party. I think what's the broader picture though is that this is Elon is somebody who has Elon himself is no white knight here, especially as it relates to Democrats. This is somebody who, predicates so much of his focus on eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, which, by the way, so do the Republicans, but everyone is full of shit here. Elon had carte blanche, full reign of government with Doge, and instead of going after the biggest agency in government, which has failed 7 audits, which is the Pentagon, he goes after USAID, which is 0.5% of the budget and affords us soft power without firing a single bullet across the world. He goes after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which saved billions of dollars for 200 million consumers. That is a fraction of the budget. He goes after the EPA, the NLRB, the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation, every single agency that had enforcement or fines levied against him.
He breaks through the virtue signal. He breaks through the virtue signaling. It's dire irony, and people who don't get the joke may be offended, but someone has to do it. We are headed off a cliff by the people who pretend to care. Yeah, I generally agree as well. I feel like, especially someone who is as good at it as Destiny is, this could be done in more politically effective ways. There has to be a healthy middle ground between the jerk off conversations that he was having with Ben Shapiro and the making fun of kids drowning, edgy bullshit that he's doing right now. There has to be some sort of middle ground between those two things.
Ones that he focused on, and instead the Pentagon gets a raise to $1 trillion. So spare us on the grandstanding about reining in reining in the federal deficit. But the same goes for this Republican Party. All of these people, House Freedom Caucus included, predicated so much of their identity on this idea that they were gonna that we have to stop this existential threat that is overspending and saddling our kids and future generations with all of this interest that we're not going to be able to pay off. All these motherfuckers voted for it. All of these people are completely full of shit. They string their people along just like they did with the Epstein situation. They strung all their supporters along with these promises that they're going to be the fiscal responsive, that they're going to be the fiscal conservatives, that they're going to be the adults in the room. They get into office, they explode the deficit because the only priority they have, not Epstein, not lowering costs, not adding jobs, none of that stuff. It is giving themselves a tax cut. That's the only long-standing principle they have. It's all they did in 2017. It's all they're doing right now. Everything else is window dressing to con their supporters, their marks, into thinking that they're going to help them.
All right.
Piers, let me say this about him real quick, Elon Musk, and how this could be an issue. You go back and you look at guys like Jesse Ventura. You go back and you look at Schwarzenegger. You go back and you look at Ross Perot. There is a history that when certain individuals see an opportunity and a third party comes about, that you can be a disruptor. If Elon Musk just wants to be a disruptor in the midterm elections, there's no doubt he can pull it off. If he's smart about where he plays, if he tries to play nationwide, I think that would fall apart. But look, there's a tight majority in the House, a tight majority in the Senate. The Senate is leaning more towards the Democrats in the upcoming midterm election. It favors them in the election map and who's up. Yeah, I think Elon Musk, if he wanted to go in there and be a disruptor to Donald Trump, he certainly has the money to do
and
it.
It's not just money.
Right.
It's not just money, because he also has 200 million followers on his own social media platform.
He also, Elon, something that a lot of Republicans don't. This could be a really, really big thing, or it could be absolutely fucking absolutely nothing. Elon seems like he has really, really bad follow-through ability. So if he has an idea like this, I don't have faith that he'll follow it through to fruition. I think the only reason that he was following X through to fruition is because he got it relatively easily. It seems like he kind of said that he wanted it, and then he immediately got it anyway. And then you can't really pawn that kind of thing off. When it comes to like starting a new political party, it's very easy to just drop that, like, oh yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore, and then just stop doing it. But the thing that could make this really dangerous is that when he announced on the day that the Big Beautiful Bill passed, I think he was talking about specifically primarying certain people in the House, or so focusing on certain seats in Congress. If he focuses on that instead of running a presidential candidate, that could be a fucking huge thing. That could be the make or break between, you know, something like the Big Beautiful Bill passing, period. That could be an absolutely huge thing. So we'll just have to see how it plays out and how much follow through Elon Musk actually has on this. Because when it came to, you know, politically engaging the first time around with his time in Doge, it seemed like he was really, really quick to distance himself from the Trump administration, and then from politics broadly, until the Big Beautiful Bill was threatened to pass. But it doesn't seem like his political it doesn't seem like his political interests survive very long.
Sure.
Right? And I think that played a big part in how Trump won. I think he got a lot of people to, on a daily basis, Elon Musk was all in on Trump.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think Elon Musk is a really smart guy. I've spent time with him, interviewed him. I think he's probably going to look at this and say, hey, I want to rein in some of these things. I want you to hold true the Republican Party to what you claimed you were going to do, going back to the point that was just made a moment ago by the guest. He wants to make sure that the people that he helped get this power continue to do the right thing more often than they go and do other things. And so this is that shot across the bow.
Yeah,
I understand why he's doing it. It does concern me that you end up blowing up the entire thing and the progress you made. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Destiny, is there anything intrinsically wrong in the concept of a third party? Would it help break the kind of, you know, very long-running intransigent nature of the American political system?
I mean, with most people, the math problem is that if you create a third party, all you're doing is siphoning votes off from another party that you're more likely to agree with. But Elon might have a special advantage because in 10 or 15 years, it's projected that 50 to 100,000 of his children could vote for him in an election. So maybe that'll swing things a different way, you know?
That is a funny joke, Destiny. You've got it in you. Natalie.
Well, if the Republicans have it their way, if all those kids are in Texas, who knows how many will be gone to natural disasters that could have never been
Jesus
prevented or
Christ.
screened for or anything else. So
My
there you go. I'll make it offensive.
You know
for
what I felt about the debate part of that was what Senator Cruz told me. I thought was a good way of describing it. He said, look, actually probably the big problem here, the only thing that might have made any difference is if more people had been able to heed an alarm faster, it might have saved some lives, because it happened so fast and was so devastating. And the truth is, it's in an area with a patchy cell phone. A lot of people wouldn't have got the messages. And had they had a siren system, it might have saved some lives. I imagine they will now all get siren systems. And
Piers, can I ask you a question on that point?
Yeah.
And that is, like, look, notwithstanding the fact that Republicans have spent so much money handing themselves a tax cut, but ICE now has a bigger military, a bigger budget than the IDF, than Brazil's military, than Netherlands military.
As texting myself, I find that comment distasteful and crude. Yeah, welcome to watching Destiny engage in anything ever. He's very distasteful and crude. That's kind of a big part of who he is. I mean, hey, I agree.
is military. If ICE was a military unto itself, it would have the 16th biggest budget in the world. And so think about all of the things that we can do I mean, you want to talk about America first? Think about all the things we could do in this country. Like, I don't know, giving a warning system to these folks in rural Texas, for example, who could really benefit from that.
But I don't think, but I don't think they're mutually. Yeah, but Brian, hang on.
Let me finish my sentence.
I don't think they're mutually.
Brown people
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
True.
A country like the United States of America is
way bigger than
still
Brazil,
the
bro.
hang on, Ben, is the #1 superpower in the world, right? The idea you can't do 2 things at once, or 10 things
It's
at
insane.
once, or 100 things at
Yes,
once
you should be giving them the alarm system and plucking the brown people out. That's what you should be doing.
is nuts. Of course.
True.
Excuse me, why is Ben saying that's the same? The Republicans have spent the last 5 years telling us that. You can't spend money in Ukraine, you have to spend it here. You can't spend money on food stamps, you have to spend it on your American people. Every
if you
time it
understood
comes
what we
to
thought about
cutting
Ukraine,
programs,
you would understand
every
what
single
the point
time
is.
it comes
So I
to
can
cutting
explain that to you if
programs,
you need a-
you guys
if you
are
need a
okay with
masterclass
cutting
real
some
quick.
programs, but you never want to spend any money on anything else. Will you admit
Completely agree.
that? Will you admit that the budget is out of control and that Trump did
again,
absolutely
if-
nothing?
I'll
Will
go-
you admit that? Will you admit that the budget is out of control and Trump did that? He failed
Piers,
completely.
how long have you and I
on the
been
Big
doing
Beautiful
TV
Bill.
together?
A long
How
time.
many times
Admit
have I
it. He won't
complained
admit it. He won't
about
admit it.
government spending?
No,
listen
it's
to what
not
I'm saying.
government spending. It's Donald Trump. Your party has a
This is the
moral
difference.
failing
You're a
that they're
psychopath that
allocating
is
budget
obsessed with
appropriately.
Donald Trump.
You're a
talking about
psychopath.
trying to
It's
find
true.
kids
It's
in
across
Texas
all
while you've
government.
got horses galloping across
It's
MacArthur
all
Park,
government.
paid for by the federal government, Donald Trump's federal government. Will you admit that
I'm
they
in
failed
favor
in
of getting
controlling
out
the
20
budget?
million illegal immigrants. I'm
Did
in
they
favor
fail?
of getting out
Did they
20 million
fail
illegal
at
immigrants.
controlling
And
the
if you
budget?
guys
Did they
would have
fail at
secured the
controlling the
border,
budget?
we wouldn't
Did they fail
have
at
to
controlling
spend
the
all that
budget?
damn money. We
Did they
wouldn't
fail
have
at
to spend
controlling
all
the
that money
budget?
if you guys would
Did
have
they
secured
fail?
the border.
Do you know
So I said,
something? You know
come
the
on
truth.
in.
Do you know the truth?
You won't even answer the question.
Do you know the
There's
truth
nothing
from
will get
across the
solved. Nothing will
pond,
get
if I
solved.
may raise a hand? Is I think the debt was in 1980 was $1 trillion, and now it's heading towards $40 trillion. And in that
Out
time,
of
last time I checked, in that time there were a lot of Democrat presidents and a lot of Republican presidents. So it may
Bingo.
just be destiny. This is a problem which both
Excuse me?
parties,
Bingo.
which both
Exactly.
parties,
Which
Which
president
both
had the budget
parties
surplus?
have
Remember, it's all
contributed
Donald
to.
Trump's
Who had
fault.
the
It's
last
all
budget
Donald
surplus?
Trump's
What president
fault,
was that?
Piers. It's got to be
Wait,
Trump.
why are
Trump's
you
been
laughing?
president
Do you
for
even
50
know how
years.
numbers? You didn't even know how time
It's
worked
50
earlier.
years
So
of
how do you
Donald
explain
Trump,
it?
Piers.
Understand the
50
budget.
years of Donald Trump
Who had
being
the last
president.
budget
It's all his
surplus?
fault.
All right, I
Who
didn't
had
hear
the
a
last
word
budget
of any of that. I want to give the last.
Bill
Bill
Clinton. It was Bill
Okay,
Clinton. The answer's
enough,
Bill Clinton
enough,
for anybody
enough.
listening at home, okay? Bill
Enough. I want to
Clinton.
give the last word to Natalie, who's been waiting very patiently. Natalie, last word to you about this issue of Elon, Trump, the deficit, where this all goes, another party. Your quick thoughts.
Well, Elon failed at Doge, not just the 2 trillion to 1 trillion to 9 billion.
This person is going to be super, super anti-Elon because they work for Steve Bannon, by the way. So don't be confident that the Republicans are willing to introspect and actually criticize. It's because she's just blindly allegiant to a different cult leader. Instead, this time it's not Donald Trump, it's not Elon Musk, it's Steve Bannon, the person who's paying her.
Should have been criminal referrals and indictments for all of the, scams and schemes that they were talking about. And there wasn't one person, maybe one random USAID contractor sort of on a separate path. Good luck if he wants to start a party with what I think a foreign-born COO of it. He might be getting deported imminently, so that'll be tough running the America Party from South Africa.
Okay. On that note, we will
Unhinged.
leave it. I'm going to go and have my ears treated by an emergency medic. But thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Piers.
Well, join me on the phone now.
Wow, the last Destiny appearance on Piers Morgan, probably. Very good. Okay. Yeah, Destiny looked fucking insane there, but I mean, what else would you expect?